It is an honor today to host you and moderate today's or this month's March 2024 technical lecture from Ghana in collaboration with Uganda, South Africa, Namibia, Wari session, Tanzania, Germany, Vienna, Romania sessions as well. My name is Reverend Nokong, SP Director for Ghana session. And today I promise you're going to have fun, learning and sharing ideas. Just a few household chores or remarks. Please kindly mute yourself if you're not talking, so that we don't get feedback from your surroundings, please. And tomorrow is Easter for those who are in Africa. For those in Europe, I don't know when your Easter is. There's a few advice. Few of them. If you're traveling over the weekend, please drive safe and ensure that you come back to us safely. All right. So before I introduce the speaker, let me give a few minutes to the session chair of Ghana to welcome us all to today's session. So please, Madam Shina, also please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I'm using the SP
Yes, we can hear you.
login today. So yeah, thank you all for joining us for this really important technical lecture. Thank you, Gabriel, and all the other sections who agreed to do this collaboration. This is a very important topic for this period, and we look forward to learning a lot from what you have to deliver for us. So let me not take too much of your time. Over to you, Riverson.
All right, thank you so much, Able Session Chair of Ghana, even for giving us this platform on your monthly technical lecture to discuss the energy perspective, what is happening. And I personally looking forward to understand what Gabi has for us in terms of what is happening, because that one alone is an energy terror. So what did he say? He says, if only you had one shot, an opportunity to learn energy and ask whatever you've ever wanted, one moment, would you attend or just let it slip? So today we're talking about exploring different energy sources and sources to say what they mean to our planet and the people in it, and how your career can play a big part in shaping the future. From data to graphs to personal career perspective, discover how simple choices in your career can make a massive impact on energy of the world today, while keeping us up with education now matters more than ever. I'm personally thrilled to learn today, and a bunch of questions, not only from myself, also from the audience that will join us online. Without much ado, I'll invite Gabriel to take us through his slides, giving him between 30 to 35, 40 minutes to let us know what he has for us today. He will introduce himself, so don't worry. The introduction will come from him. So please, I want to share my screen, and I'll allow Gabriel to take the ride. Thank you so much for joining, and let's ride.
Gabi, thank you very much, Robert. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today to all the sections. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you see it in full mode.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. We see the skies.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm here today to talk about something that has been always there, right? About energy, what it means, but what it means for us in different places of the world. I think a lot of the times what we do is we forget what are our capabilities, where we live, what is the economic structure, what can we do with the sources of energy that we have, and what kind of impacts that has on us and the communities around us. Now, the presentation is set in a way that I will be sharing some data with you in a less formal way, just for you to get an insight of what's going on in the world in terms of sources of energy, and try to walk you through this. And hopefully you gain a different perspective after this presentation. And most importantly, start questioning things, start questioning what's going on, start thinking a lot more critically about what you do, what impact does that have, right? First of all, I would like to thank all the SP sections that were organizing this talk. I really appreciate you all getting together for this. I think it's very important for us to continue collaborating together within SP. SP International has given me the opportunity to basically engage in my career the way I have, and it's been a blessing, I would say, in the past years. The video stars, you will see a couple of videos during the presentation on perspectives from students and professionals. And then most importantly, my family and friends that have always been there for me, and they've given me the opportunity in my life to make the choices I did and support me throughout. So we often take energy for granted, right? Subconsciously. And why I say this is because depending on where you're located and what your access to affordable energy is, a lot of the times back in Europe and in the United States, we take things for granted in a way that there's continuous access to electricity, continuous access to heat, and that becomes part of life, and we never really stop and ask ourselves, oh wait, I set the temperature at 21 degrees C in the room. How does that work? Where is that coming from? So it's a daily thing that we don't think about, and this is the idea of raising that conscience, right? So when we talk about perspective, and when I say it is because even on this call, right, we're all from different places, different cultures, backgrounds, and personal lives and professional lives, and so our understanding of the world and what's going on is going to be different. There are certain realities that are set in place, but how we perceive that, it varies. And we have seen this in the energy world quite often when there is so much talk about fossil fuels and the renewables and the transition and what that really means, right? So a lot of the times you see some, let's say, confronting ideas, thought-provoking, discussions, which is a nice way of saying people disagree. And if you're in Europe, in different countries, there's a different push for different sources of energy. And if you're in other places that still seek to build the economic structure, there's different kind of ambitions, right? And so always think about it, the way you see things is not the way other people see things. A little bit about myself, just to give you an understanding of where I come from and what I did. I was born in Tripoli in Libya, so I lived 18 years of my life over there. They were some of the most beautiful days of my life. I've met great life friends. As a matter of fact, my best friends are from the United States and Uganda. Went through a lot of life experiences living in a multicultural place, which really helped me a lot. My roots are in Serbia. My parents are from Serbia. That's where I did my college first 2 years, and then got a scholarship and moved to Wyoming in the United States. One of the most beautiful places in the US. It's close to my heart. And it's given me a lot when I graduated there in terms of starting my career and what I was doing after that, right? So my elementary and high school was at a Pakistani community school. My elementary and high school was at an English-speaking school that was done by it had an Irish curriculum, right? And then I went to high school in the Pakistani community school and built a lot of strong friendships. The picture you see there, my friends from Sudan and Ethiopia, we still stay in touch up to date. So you build bonds that last forever, right? The college in the United States, I got my bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering and then did a master's in petroleum back in Serbia during my work time, right? What you see here, the flags up there, are the places that I managed and that I was privileged to visit and work in. I started working with Halliburton in my career in the unconventional shale, the much so no disliked fracturing world, which is a completely different topic we can talk about some other time. Lived about a year in the US, and then, as you can tell, it was super cold in Wyoming, so it was a big change. And then I moved to Saudi Arabia. So I went from minus 30 to plus 40. I worked offshore for a couple of years in the Gulf, and then a couple of years in the desert doing non-conventional and conventional stimulation. After that, I had the opportunity to go back to North Dakota, which got even colder, but I was exposed to some of the best new technologies in the industry, and then got the opportunity to start working for an operator in Romania, OMV Petrom. And this is where I was a senior stimulation engineer in the Black Sea, right? The most recent change that I've made is I've joined Blade Energy Partners out of Dallas, Texas. And my main roles are in completion and stimulation, but also recently something that's very close to my heart and that I believe is going to be the future in terms of energy is geothermal energy, extracting the heat beneath our feet. And that is like one of the most promising things. So this is a little bit about me and my background, just to give you a sense of what I've seen, what I've experienced. And I can tell you some of these changes were pretty drastic, but those are the changes that helped me grow. Now, facts matter. Let's get into it. The question says, what part of world energy consumption is comprised of fossil fuels as of 2022? And if I give you 4 options at this very moment, maybe if you want, you can put them in the chat box of what you think is, which option is it, A, B, C, or D? But essentially what this graph shows is a change of 22 years in the world, went from about 88, 87% to 82%, right? That's a 5 to 6% change in 22 years. Now, technologies have been developing exponentially. Things have been changing quite fast in the industry, right? And our industry, the energy industry, is one of the most advanced ones in the world, right? I mean, if you think of it, we're drilling 7-8 kilometers underground and targeting a little piece of rock to extract energy out of it. So if you ever question yourself, have you made the right choices? Yes, you have. Be proud of what you're doing. Can we do things better? Absolutely, yes. And I'll walk you through it right now. So if you look at the global energy consumption on this graph, from the 1920s, right, we had this big boom in the industrial phase. Things started changing, and now we started using a lot more energy. Fossil fuels increased exponentially, and then we have all other sorts of energies that came in. And basically, the fact is that the primary consumption increased by a factor of 13. So why is that important? Well, it's important because it is important because
I'm trying hard to mute him, but somehow it's not working. Julian, can you mute yourself? I'm trying to even remove him and it's not working.
No problem.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So hey, Julian, can you hear us?
I'm even trying to remove him from the meeting. It's no,
No worries. I guess it's okay now.
I've been muting so many people easily, but for some reason his is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I think we should be okay right now. Yeah, no problem. So the global energy consumption has increased by so much, right? And if energy consumption increases, we need sources of energy, right? We need to meet that requirement because we live a certain lifestyle. Now, this is a post I made on LinkedIn a while ago, and it received quite some good feedback. Now, like I told you earlier, part of the presentation is a bit informal, and I want you to understand one thing. I am a big supporter of sober energy policy. We need to accept the reality, and if we want to make a positive change, that is how we do it. But if you go out there on LinkedIn and you make a post that oil and gas is obsolete, while it may be in certain countries in the world, quotes, it is not the reality of the world. So by doing that, you're only helping spread misinformation and changing the perspective in a way that doesn't reflect reality. So why would you do that? That is a question that other people can answer. Our population is growing in the world, right? And that's okay. Now the question is, we'll have a demand and a supply. how are we going to meet this? And the industry has been trying to make this work, and that's why we see those cycles, right? In terms of oil price and what it does to the industry. So if you look at this number on the top of the screen, you would guess, hopefully you guessed it in your mind, that it's the WTI oil price of today. I went and checked, right? So why the roller coaster? Well, because this has been happening throughout history. And one of the things you often hear from students and young professionals, like, why do I want to be in an industry that gives me this kind of insecurity? It's a good question to ask. So you have to be able to accept the fact that in our industry, there's going to be ups and downs. So when I say our, in this case, I mean the fossil fuel industry, but the world is changing very fast. So geothermal is becoming part of it. CCS is becoming part of it. And so these kind of drops might not be so severe as things are changing. This could be my optimistic way of thinking, but based on the past, there is always going to be a drop. The question is, do we like this? That is on you to answer. Are you okay with getting a job and then handling the downturn, because it's part of the process. Now, we use energy to live the lifestyles that we do. We fly a lot, we travel a lot, we use our cars, we cook. We need to live one way. So what I was looking for is, like, how do you define happiness, right? Like, what makes you happy? Are you okay with flying once a year, once in 2 years, 5 times in a year? That's your lifestyle, but your lifestyle dictates energy consumption. And so I was looking at a development report from 1977 from the UN, and it said human poverty is more than income poverty, right? So it's not just that materialistic concept. It is a denial of choices and opportunities for living a tolerable life. And this is very important to keep in our mind, considering that the energy world is one that enables us to live the way we do. So why is education important? And why it's important to learn certain facts so that you can use your critical thinking and make better decisions out of that, right? I hope you will be able to hear this. Just let me know if you can hear it. Do you hear it?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
We can't hear him. No, we
Can you hear the video?
Hold on. Not yet.
What? Try now.
No,
Does
I
it work?
can't hear. I can't hear.
Okay.
So you may want to check the sound from your end. I don't know.
No, I think it's when you share the screen. Give me 1 second.
Ah, okay.
1 second. Share sound. Perfect. Got it. Let me know if you see it.
Yeah, we see it.
Perfect. You should be able to hear it.
Let's
Hello,
see.
hello.
Yeah, we can
Right.
hear now.
Not so long ago, and asked me if I can contribute with my take on energy, with this and this. Two big questions, right? To start, long gone are the days where technologies are just used for those who could afford it. Like in today's world, it's not just about having the right technology, but also about having access to the resource and how to consciously exploit this resource. Having one is just not enough. So how do we make sure that technology and resources are made in an ethical way? Well, to do so, we bring our brightest to the table, and it's here where you guys come into play. It's here where you can tip the scale. Now, more than ever, there's a need for fresh eyes, for a younger and eager mindset to not just do the right thing, but making sure that it stays that way. Education more than ever is needed in our playing fields. I have seen this coming generation come full of knowledge, but they're thirsty for experience. So don't be afraid to get started. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get started. We're already seeing that energy, same as water, plays one of the most important roles in our lives. Without water, there's no life. Without energy, there's no way to move things, industries, economies. Energy will have to be accessible and affordable for everyone. And again, it will be up to you guys to direct the boat in the right direction. More than ever, there's a need for people as prepared as you are. If only you guys are willing to go the extra mile to get that experience, that so needed experience. And well, that's been my pleasure to share my 2 cents with you guys. My name is Ethan Becerra. I had the opportunity to meet Gabby while we were assigned as offshore frac engineers in the Persian Gulf in Saudi Arabia not so long ago. Thank you very much. Oh, I almost forget. Here's the evidence.
So the whole point of that was to give you a perception and perspective for somebody else from a different country with a different background, right? Now let's look at some data real quick. The dominant fuel in Asia Pacific is accounting for 49% of consumption is coal. We don't like coal. Coal is dirty, but coal seems to be reliable. And it seems to be the go-to solution when things get really tough. Certain countries that have promised changes in terms of renewables have had to go back to it. Why? Because the energy policy is not supported correctly. Because we're not making wise decisions on how to make a proper transition. We want to change things through the night, then we pay the price of it. That is self-evident. Poor living conditions. You can't say you live in a fair world when a very good chunk of it doesn't have access to the similar things that you do, right? So if we talk from the perspective of human flourishing, why am I more important than anybody else that's out there? We should have access to similar life conditions. And what are the decisions that brought us to that? This is an interesting fact. 4 days, right? What does it mean? Consumption drives things. And 4 out of 10 people, there's about 3 billion people, do not have access to clean modern energy for cooking. Now, just imagine that. You don't have access to proper cooking, which is a basic human right for life. The richest 1% in the EU emit on average 43 tons of CO2, 9 times as the global average. France has 92% of electricity coming from low carbon sources. Sweden is 99% nuclear. How did they do it? What is it that they did right? Something maybe we can learn from. So the largest energy consumers, Iceland, Norway, Canada, United States. The average person in these countries consumes as much as 100 times more than those in some of the poorest countries. Am I denouncing that? No. I'm no one to tell you how to live your life, and nor should anybody else. But the question is, if you are using 100 times more than somebody else, the question is, what kind of moral standing is there to ask for a transition that is not properly planned? Think a little bit about that. So let's look at it about it, right? This is fossil fuels, right? If you look at South Africa, India, China, United States, it's been kind of gradually decreasing, right? But the reason I shared this graph is because Sweden is just out there. It's on its own at 40% and decreasing. So in terms of the transition, they've managed to do something right. And we need to look into it. And the whole point of this presentation is for you to go back and do some research. Why are certain countries using nuclear for electricity and it's going so well? And why certain are not? And how long is the process? And we'll go through that, yeah? Then you look at access to clean fuels for cooking. And you see 100% on the top. Okay, so we got Croatia, Chile, Sweden, United States. We have certain countries that are moving up. But then if you look at Nigeria and certain other countries, it's a lower percentage. And why is that so? Why is that situation that way? Nigeria is one of the countries that has the biggest access to fossil fuels. So an opportunity to improve the quality of life. What is it that went wrong? It's just a question I'm asking. Another perspective is from Abdallah Al-Badawi. He used to study in France. He's currently working in Rystad Energy in the United States. So this perspective is important. Let's see what he has to say.
Hi there, my name is Abdallah Badawi. I'm from the Comoros Island. I'm a master's student at IFP School and Colorado School of Mines in the United States. So a different perspective in energy industry is really important because it allows you to see the energy industry differently. Number one, we need to understand that energy plays a multiplier effect, meaning that energy gives you access to healthcare, gives you access to education, and also increase the GDP, increase economic activities. So this is why it's really important. And the second thing I would like to talk about is the energy trilemma. So when you talk about energy trilemma, we talk about energy affordability, energy accessibility, but also energy sustainability. So all these three things, the triangle, the energy triangle, All these depend on where you come from and where you live and where your economic background. So it's really important to have this diversified perspective because, for example, your energy needs are not the same as for me, where I come from Africa, where we have low electrification rate. But also your energy need is not the same for someone from Europe, where they have used to take the train, for example, or they can commute using the train, while here you have to take the car in the US, for example. So having an understanding of the different energy system in different parts of the world, the consumption, the utilization, but also the sustainability, the source of this energy is really important, critical as we move to the energy transition, because we have to make sure, remember, that we leave no one behind. We have to have equality access to energy, but also equitable, and make sure that it's also sustainable. Thank you.
I hope you got that message back with you. We leave no one behind. So another post that I did online some time ago, it was this one. You might find it funny, but it depicts the reality that is a bit sad. I had a small anecdote. I was in Netherlands at a conference. I was talking to a gentleman that's in the oil and gas industry, right? And he said that we should invest billions of euros to the third world countries so they can all go green, right? That's a noble goal. Sounds good, doesn't work, because it's been proven that it doesn't work. And so the question that I asked is, what kind of business model allows you to send billions of euros to a country where you're trying to change the energy system in a way that's not applicable to that geography? If you're in Egypt and you have 298 days a year of sunlight, sunshine, just solar energy, it makes sense to install the solar panels. But if you're up in the UK and it's always cloudy, does it really make sense to do that? It makes more sense to use wind, offshore wind, which is what is being done. So it's just keep these things in mind, right? It's very easy to be in a pedestal and ask different countries to make changes that you think are correct without having experienced the quality of life. And I say this because I've experienced it myself. I've lived without electricity, intermittent electricity. Yeah. And I know how that feels. But there's a lot of people out there that don't have that. And I don't judge them for that. But when you make statements, you better be sure that you know what you've gone through and what it means for others, right? This is an interesting one. I wanna share this a little bit, right? So if you look at coal, it's slowly declining, but it's still up there. So energy security matters. When it gets cold, here's a fact. 203,000 people die from cold in Europe per year. In Europe. That's a study of 830 cities within 30 countries. 203,000 people die from cold. The question is why? At one of the conferences, one of the gentlemen said, well, Poland has a lot of coal and they're using and it's dirty. Okay, facts, coal is dirty. But if you were to pick human life versus having to resort to energy that you have available, what do you pick? This is not a fix it all in one evening situation. So we need to think a little bit about that. Nuclear has been declining. That's a good question to ask, right? France, which I commend in terms of using it for electricity, has done a great job. Sweden as well, the United States. What are the other countries doing for it? Romania, for example, has about 20 to 21% coming from nuclear, which is great. What are the other countries doing in terms of this investment? And the question to ask is, if you don't have proper access to fossil fuels and you totally jump that step, what will it take for this country to invest into nuclear? It's not as easy as it sounds. So what you understand here is that energy dynamics is complex. You cannot go out there and just make very simple, low resolution blanket statements, right? You cannot. We have a responsibility towards ourselves, towards our peers in the world out there, because believe it or not, all of you that are on this call, if you're studying, and sometimes you might feel, oh, you know, I'm a student and who knows where my life will be. Your decisions will matter. Your decisions matter every day. But when you get into stronger positions, I'm not calling them higher positions, and you have to decide about energy policy, please be aware that whatever you make as a decision, it is affecting somebody else's quality of life. So I put that thing out there. So please don't try to stay away from low resolution blanket statements if you're not fully informed in it, right? This is a quick snip at what EU is doing, right? Fossil fuels, 42% of EU's electricity comes from fossil fuels. But the EU has been pretty adamant about moving to greener sources of energy, right? And has done quite a good job in certain segments. Heating and cooling, 70% of it comes from fossil fuels. So when you say that you want to transition to a cleaner source, absolutely, let's do it right. But do not demonize the fossil fuel industry, because all of us in it, and I'm in geothermal right now, I'm in geothermal as well, right? All of us in it, we're still those, do we wake up in the morning and just, you wake up in the morning, have your coffee and say, how am I going to mess up the world today? How am I going to make it dirtier? We don't think like that. We don't do that. So it is our responsibility to change the public image. There's a lot of really good things coming out of our industry. The quality of life, first of all, but also we're investing energy and money to develop geothermal, to develop carbon capture and all other sources, right? So let's go real quick about the sources of energy. I'm not going to go through each point. It's on you to read it a little bit. But if you look at nuclear energy, you can look at who the leaders are in it and what are the changes that are happening. There's been a drop from the 2000s in Sweden and France. And I definitely need to look into this. It's like what happened during that time period that caused a drop in terms of, nuclear energy usage. And then South Korea is kind of moving up. And certain things are still going down. Germany's going down. So what are the policies that are driving this? Because nuclear itself is a very dense energy source, right? And then I looked into what are the death rates per unit of electricity production, right? Because a lot of the times we hear nuclear, you probably watched the Netflix Chernobyl, and you think, okay, there's been some great catastrophes in the history of mankind because of it, and so we fear it, right? But the question is, it's 0.03. So the death rate from nuclear is, after solar, is one of the lowest. The other question I get asked is, well, the problem with that is if an accident happens, it has tremendous impact. But we do have the innovation and the people to try to stop that, right? So something to think of. This is one of my favorite ones. There's solar and wind, and there's people that have turned towards it. Absolutely good when you have wind and solar available. When there's no wind and there's no sun, it's very difficult. We're working on storage technologies, our ability to store energy, and that's one of the big impacts, right? And then there's nuclear kind of drowning there, but geothermal has kind of been forgotten. Geothermal has been around for more than 40, 50 years. It started in Lardarello in Italy, and now we're looking at hydrothermal systems, low temperatures. There's a lot of good work being done in super hot rock. So we're trying to break the barriers. We want to go beyond 300, 375 C, get into supercritical conditions, get the energy intensity out of the heat that's available. It's an overlooked thing that is going to change the world, according to my opinion, because it's being used. 0.4% is coming from geothermal, but we can see an order of magnitude change hopefully within this decade. That is the goal, because they call this the geothermal decade. And if you look at the map, you have the United States leading, Turkey, a beautiful country with a lot of geothermal potential, Philippines, Indonesia, Italy, of course, Iceland. You see the dot over there? Oh, that beautiful place. 500,000 homes are being powered by geothermal. So it's possible, it's doable. We can use our expertise in the oil and gas. There's no such thing as an oil engineer or a gas engineer. You can specialize in it, but your skills are transferable. You can do both things. And I've learned it myself. Then if you look at wind energy, right? Wind energy has been around for a while. If you look at the leaders, you have Asia leading, Europe, North America. Obviously, you want to target offshore wind because of the amount that you can harness. There's a lot of other things to look like, right? It's an interesting fact. 350 meters from a typical wind farm is 35 to 45 decibels, right? So it doesn't make as much noise, but that's 350 meters away, because a lot of the times we also hear about what the footprint of this technology is, right? But in terms of efficiencies, we could do better. If you look at the map, you have the Scandinavian, very green color. They do very good at it. What is it that they did well? Well, Norway invested in hydrocarbons, has the capacity to take that money and build a better sustainable future. That's how you do it. You don't go from a weak economic system where you don't have the means and you want to jump into renewables where you cannot handle that. Because at the end of the day, and I'll say this, is it comes down to paying the bills. I asked a friend of mine in Romania, are you okay if we increase your electricity bill by 20% just so you can take it from a renewable? So he says, yes, I'm willing to pay that for a cleaner future. Okay. But I told him, you're an engineer. You make a lot more money. What do we do with my grandfather? My grandfather in Serbia, he has a pension. That pension is very low. If I increase 20% his electricity bill, he's now in a situation where he might not afford it. The question I ask is someone's life more important than somebody else's life? It's a resounding no. But why are we making policy changes that don't reflect that? Solar energy. Like I said earlier, Egypt, 298 days a year, if you have the sun, you should be able to use it, right? So it's been developing quite heavily. You can see the dark spots on the map over there. Australia is doing very, very good. And if you look at the economics, because at the end of the day, it's a business model, the cost has dropped over 80% since 2009. So we have these exponential changes that will affect the ratio of fossil fuels and other types of energies. But expecting it an overnight change, this is just a nice wish that's not backed by reality and can be very dangerous. Hydropower is the good OG. Hydropower has been around for a while. It's reliable. It's a very good source of energy. As you can see, the Scandinavian segment again is very dark blue. So Scandinavia is doing something right. If you go after this presentation and you look up the GDP and you look up the life quality and you look up what the investments are, you might start thinking, it's like, what is it that they did right? Let's hear from Jawad. He's based out of the UK, what he thinks about this.
Hello everyone, my name is Jawad Shukri and I'm a reservoir engineer by background. Everything runs by energy, and what we definitely need for the future of our planet and people is more affordable and more sustainable sources of energy. As an energy engineer, we can do a lot of things, but to decide what can we do and what can we contribute toward this future, we have to be tracking all the changes that's happening in the energy sector and in the world, in people's life, and decide what can be our role toward that. So, for example, what I've learned recently, and many people would agree with me, is that AI or machine learning methods could be a very useful tool in different things. One of them could be energy, right? So what I've done, I started, beside all my actual job, I started to learn machine learning methods as a tool, maybe it will be used in the future of my career. And also I'm trying to motivate other people through volunteering activities to use the same tool for their own job, for their own purposes, and hopefully for the future of the energy sector. And another thing that I had the chance to do it myself was beside my PhD that was focused on the CO2 storage. I took the opportunity to work on fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cells, and redox flow batteries, because I thought that could be one of the good tools in the future to provide more sustainable and greener energy for people. So what I suggest you doing is try to read a lot of articles, try to imagine what your role, what do you want your role to be in the future of the energy sector, and based on that, you can basically by the time decide what can you do and what can you offer. And don't forget, you have to be passionate to do so, because there would be a lot of things to do. There would be a lot of work and effort needed. So you have to stay passionate to be able to accomplish all of this. Stay tuned and good luck for all of you.
So we got a perspective from Mexico, we got a perspective from the Comoros, and one from the UK. Jawad said two very important things. You got to love what you do. You have to. You can't be good at what you do if you don't love it. That's one thing. And the other thing is innovation. There's a lot of good work being done. All this media-driven posts that you see online, I'm not picking specific ones, but these are bombastic titles. They're not meant to, but they can affect you. They can make you think that the world is not doing. No, the energy world is blooming in a way that we have managed to innovate so much. And now we're working in geothermal, and we're working in carbon capture, and we're doing, hydrogen, and we're investing in solar and wind, and fossil fuels have always been there to support that. Yeah. So demonizing them is just not cool. Another perspective from Romania. Let's hear it. I am shortly getting to the close of the talk, so we can then jump to a little bit of a discussion. Yeah.
Energy represents the quantification of matter in motion. Mine, yours, and everybody's. The revelation of energy existence reshaped our society permanently. So imagine what we can accomplish if we educate ourselves in order to tap its full potential. For me, this means bringing sustainable and affordable energy to 32% of people who still do not have access to natural gas in Romania. And while the minimum wage in Germany stands at $2,071, in Romania it is just $670. Unfortunately, the price for kilowatt per hour remains consistent in both countries at $0.36. This results in a state of energy vulnerability for 1 in 2 Romanians. But you listening to my perspective gives me hope that working together towards a more inclusive approach to energy policy is possible. Because if we truly care and try to understand each other, no matter how far apart our countries are and how different we are, our view on an affordable and sustainable energy will become one. Greetings from Romania.
Perfect. So Ilinka talks about energy vulnerability. It's a real thing. And she gives you a perspective of what income versus what's available looks like. Romania has done a great job in terms of engagement. Earlier, Jawad mentioned it, and I'm mentioning it now. Volunteering within SPE, being able to be out there to talk to people, to get a perspective is super, super important. So if you can, and I know you can, always stay up to date with these things because this is where you learn the most, right? I'm going to leave you with a couple of thoughts. I'm coming to the end of this, but look at your left side. It's the electricity access by 2020. And your right side is self-reported life satisfaction by 2022. Now, correlation and causation, we're engineers, or even if we're not engineers, when we look at data, you can try to start correlating, see some things that make sense and some things that don't make sense. But for me, it was interesting when I was doing my research. So if you don't have access to electricity, you tend to report a lower life satisfaction. It makes sense. It really does. So what about our industry? Some of these pictures that you see here are part of my traveling around the world. I've been blessed and I'm very thankful for the opportunities I've been given in my life to do. But what I want to tell you is being in the energy world, you're part of a critical process. You're enabling life, per se. You will be challenged professionally because you're going to change job roles and you're going to learn and fall sometimes and get up and move. And then personally, you're going to be very challenged because working with people requires skill, requires patience, requires you to think in the shoes of the other person. Every time you get any discussion from now on, and that's what I do, is I ask myself, how does the other person see the situation, right? I'm always willing to sit down and have dialogue. And I think this is the key to moving forward, right? But if you hit a conversation with just emotional gates, it's very difficult to have technical talks when it comes to that. So you're gonna get challenged about this, and you're gonna get that one boss that you might not like, or that one team leader that you might not like. But the whole point of growing is getting through those obstacles, right? You're gonna improve your technical skills. You will learn a lot. There's a lot of training classes. You'll travel the world. You will get better at what you do, but you gotta love what you do. If you wake up 1 day, 2 days, 3 days in the morning and you say, I don't feel like it, that's okay. We sometimes have, downturns in our lives. But if you go for a week and you're not happy in the morning going to your job, start asking yourself, is this what you really want? Do not let other people's perspectives drive your choices. You know what you like. If you want to be a field engineer, you do that. If you want to go into management, you do that. But there's no such thing, because comparison is really the thief of joy. I've read this somewhere, and it really is. Do not do that. You should compare yourself in a way to always improve yourself. But we all have different perspectives. You're going to meet new cultures. You're going to expand your horizons. And that's what my privilege has been across the world. Like I told you earlier, my best friends come from very different parts of the world, from Uganda, from Pakistan, from the US, from Romania, Serbia, living in San Diego. I've had this rich exposure, and a lot of you can do the same. And then travel. You're going to travel a lot. You're going to see new places. It's going to be exciting because traveling is beautiful. A couple of points I want to leave you with is empathy, right? start thinking about it a little bit. Do not come to judgment real quick, especially in our world of energy, where nowadays you see posts on LinkedIn and I often see these little mini battles between, you know, those that are driving for the green side of technology and then the fossil fuels. And you read these things and it's like, wow, that's a lot of energy you have invested to get into this. Discussions are good if they're backed by facts. We can have all sorts of discussions so long as there's mutual respect. My next slide says the same. If we learn to be a little more, if we have a little more empathy, we would do better, much better in our teams, much better in our universities, much better at our jobs. And so to bring this to an end, I was reading a book a while ago, and it said, to live in the world without becoming aware of the meaning of the world is like wandering about a great library without touching the books. And this is really important. Nowadays, information is out there, and you just get on the internet, you can find anything, right? Anything. You know, for all the beautiful things that you look up, and I'm guilty of it as well. I find myself, you know, scrolling to funny reels, and that's part of life too. But there's a website that you can access. There's information that you can question. You have an energy report from BP, an energy report from, you know, Exxon, and then you have IEA that tends to have different numbers. Let's say variations in it. What are the assumptions? How was it made? What are the references? Like, try to stay away from those bombastic titles. The world is going to end, and all these are negative things that we don't need in our life. What we need is education, and do your best as much as you can to help your peers and help yourself make better, right? Thank you very much for the time you've invested here today, and I'll leave you with a very funny meme that a friend of mine sent me. I found it very applicable here. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I'm open to a discussion. Riverson, you're here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I was talking whilst muted.
Okay.
Guys, this is amazing. It's like, I don't know. Someone is just testing me online, like, Doc, are you sure you're the one who made the presentation for him? I said, this is when like-minded people and thinking alike make such a presentation. It's amazing. It's an amazing presentation.
I've been inspired by a lot of the people on LinkedIn. I've been following NJ Ayuk as well. But this has been something that I've been, you know, thinking of quite a bit recently. It's not so much about transferring the technical knowledge itself, but it's so much about questions. Can you look up the answer? So yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So I'll pick a few questions. If you have a question, please raise up your hand. If you don't talk, please kindly write your question in the chat box. I'll be thankful enough to read it. Very insightful presentation from Professor Richard Amorim. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for such insightful and impactful presentation from Linda Antwi. We have more coming. Thank you very much for this informative presentation. Thanks a lot, and I've learned a lot from Adama. Please keep your question coming, and if you have a question, please raise up your hand, and I'll call you to make that presentation. All right. So as I'm waiting for questions, I do have one question for you, Gabriel. So now you made mention of one of my favorite themes. I mean, I call it 3 A's. And I recently posted one. And in fact, as a matter of fact, this morning I was listening to BBC, and they also reiterated that statement that for energy to be useful, for energy to be sustainable, it should be available, first of all. It should be now accessible, and most importantly, affordable for people to purchase it, right? And if you would, and I love that's one of the slides that you brought, because I always have it in my slide as well. And that shows the boom of when the hydrocarbon started, the coal, and then later the crude oil, right? But you realize that the narrative around the transitioning or the adding on was not based on environmental factors. They were solely based on the fact that that source of energy is available, accessible, and affordable. Now, the question is, when now do we change the narrative? All right. And when do we go to code? When do we switch to whatever is available? Is it based on policy or is it based on the politics, as I call it? That's the first question I'll ask. Then I'll ask others to come on.
So wait, you said is it based on policy or what?
Or the politics.
Yeah, that's a very, very good and a very, very dense question, right? I think it's very country specific, first of all. It's continent specific and country specific. And the reason I told you the anecdote earlier with the gentleman from Netherlands, very fine gentleman. But when we were at dinner, I realized that I was a little worried because he's been 30 years in the industry and he made a claim that by 2030 there will be no more oil and gas. In 30 years there will be zero oil and gas available. We're all going to go renewable. Well, that's a very noble in terms of cleaner environment goal. It's not realistic. It's never been in the past. So what is it that's going to change in the next 30 years that would allow that to happen? And the question I ask now, Riverson, if you think about it, is if we go, say, cut fossil fuels by 40%, do you know what's that going to do to the world? It's going to reverberate in ways that we can never imagine. People are okay with policy changes, but once you start taking away the comfort of life, you start taking away continuous electricity, you start taking away access to clean food, you start taking away ability to fly, which has happened during the COVID pandemic. That was driven by a different factor, but once you start taking away these things, people become pretty unhappy. And so then governments have to make up for it. So is it political or policy? I think those two things are intertwined. What I struggle with, and this is a very Gabriel-driven opinion, is government change every 4 years, in theory, 4 to 8 years, depending on which country in the world you are. And to appeal to the public, they will make the changes that they need to make. They're not, and I speak from my local experience, they're not driven by what is best for the country and what is best for the people. They're mostly driven by what is the current trend that I need to follow in order to get elected. That's morally bankrupt. That's not okay. And we should have a lot more people fighting for the right things. And the right things are accept the reality, change the system and the structure so that it can sustain you while you're transitioning, and then transition. Natural gas, beautiful fuel. Natural gas is the best transition fuel. It's much cleaner. It's available. It's used a lot in the world for electricity generation. Use that as your base to make the other changes that you want to make.
Correct. Beautiful, beautiful. So I love the way you handle this. I mean, it's amazing. So I have some hands up. Start with Paul. Paul, can you please unmute and shoot your question? We have only 5 minutes left, so please go straight to your point.
Okay. My friend, thank you so much. I'm joining from Uganda. It's good to hear you have some friends from Uganda, and I hope to become one of Uganda. And it was a very amazing presentation, very passionate. And thank you so much for putting emotions to what the implication of the energy shift would mean. So thank you so much for putting emotions to what it would actually, the end result would be like. So my first question is energy poverty the same as energy sustainability? Okay. All those things are different. We first have to solve the issue of energy poverty before we can begin talking about the issue of energy sustainability. And then the second question is, basically, Dr. Riverson Opong advocates for what he calls the 3 A's: availability, accessibility, and affordability. So I'm going to ask this from the African perspective. So for this availability, we shall need resources, okay, to explore and find out where this energy is available. And then for the accessibility, we shall need to build in the distribution systems, the pipelines or whatever it is. And also this is going to need financing. And then the other issues, of course, affordability. At what price point will it be affordable for the citizens? So looking at all these 3 A's, there's something which is going to be needed, and that is the financing. So talking from the African perspective, would it be profitable for these African countries to sort of create up, like say 10 energy banks, okay? Banks which are deliberately devoted to investing, giving in loans and investing for the more exploration of all the energy sources in Africa. And then how would that come to life? As in, from your perspective, how would you see African governments forming such an energy bank that will be able to solve this issue of the 3 A's? And then the third question is, of course, you don't like dictatorship, okay? You love self-autonomy. So, of course, there was colonization. Right now, the colonization is still continuing, but it's continuing under multinational companies. Okay, so if you are to look at the NI, for instance, where there's Total, as in they're representing the French government interest in one way or the other. So if we are having our energy completely being explored and made accessible by international companies, then will it still be able to serve the interests of the African continent and its people? So basically, these are my 3 questions. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Paul, your 3 questions is another presentation. What is that?
That is what I was going to say.
I see the other hand gone down because I'm sure Paul has already asked the question for that person. So please go ahead. You have only 5 minutes to go, guys. Let's go.
Be concise. Thank you very much, Paul. I feel like I need to do a visit in Uganda. It looks like you're very well informed, so I'm going to try to tackle the 3 questions concisely. You talked about sustainability and energy poverty. Those things don't work, right? For you to be sustainable, you have to have the structure in place. For you to have the structure in place, you cannot have poverty. And for you to eradicate poverty, you need to have a system in place that increases the GDP and your life quality, and then it helps you innovate and create a system that works. So all those things are intertwined. If you look at the 3 A's, right, and that's a very powerful point by Riverson, is it makes a lot of sense, but each of those A's carries a subcategory of a multitude of letters, and they're all intertwined. And that's what one of my slides was saying, is energy is complex. We cannot just say, this is this, let's just make it happen. It doesn't work like that. You have to look at the implications. In terms of the banks, I'm not an expert in banking. I will not be able to give so much insight in it. But what makes sense to me is, if you were to build funds, those funds need to come from somewhere, because the world works on different currencies, and that's a whole different system in place. Now, if you had a currency that worked on gold, that would work pretty well. So something to think of, maybe. And if you look at the last point that you mentioned, it's not just in Africa, right? I mean, that's the history of the world. There's been a lot of dynamics, a lot of changes. But whenever you have energy project investment, it comes with engagement, right? So if an operator comes from an external part of the world and moves into a country like it did in Romania, or it did in Serbia, or it does in Uganda, they come in with a business perspective of making money. A lot of it is driven by goodwill to build the system, but the world works on, generally, the system that we live in works on profit, right? So there can be a good balance between these 2 things, so long as the local representatives are very aware of what is the resource size, its availability, what is the growth potential, right? So if you combine these 3 and you have innovative thinkers, people that care for the place they live in and that care for the life standard of the people, you build a strong unity locally that can negotiate with the outside investors in a way that it will help build the system, but you don't give ownership in a sense of what's yours, right? Because it's on your land. So again, this is very complicated. I think Riverson was right. We probably need another presentation to go through these things, but thanks for bringing those points up. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think that brings us to another. Okay, let me read out some few highlights here. I actually love every single point he's making. Let him know he's just hitting the nail on the head for me consistently. Thank you so much. This shout out somebody on my WhatsApp page. Fikre could not hold, but he's still asking, developing countries should be careful of promises from rich countries to provide money to transit to clean energy. That is true. I agree with you. Smart guy. Example, South Africa, the money pledge is hugely insufficient, and B, most is not free, but rather loans, which just worsen the debt and interest trap, and the population eventually suffers. Thank you so much for this point. Governments must not let outside pressure prevent them from doing what is best for their people. Wow, this is awesome. Thank you for writing this to us. We'll have to read certain things like that because it motivates us to know that what we are doing is good, or we are on point. You understand? So I have the singular honor to thank you so much, Gabriel, for making time to present this. I'll say that most people could not join due to many reasons, but this is recorded, or it's being recorded, that will be shared on our YouTube page, which afterwards we're going to make viral for people to now listen on their, during their free time. But let me mention that for those who follow me on LinkedIn and is aware of should I stay or should I leave, Gabriel here is a contributor to one of the topics, or let me say, the chapters, and his presentation here is a full chapter on the book. So please anticipate. For those who've not taken time to fill out the questionnaire, please go back and fill a questionnaire. And please follow us, SPE, we are SPE. Okay, Gabriel, thank you so much once again. For those who are from Ghana session, from Africa, we are hosting the Africa Young Professional Workshop in May. We are hoping to have Gabriel join us and other people from Vienna. We are also hosting the Session Officers Workshop here in Accra, and also likewise the Africa Regional Awards, SPE Awards. We are expecting the SPE CEO here. We are also expecting the African Regional Director here in Accra, and many more SPE delegates come from Europe and America. I hope I'm not missing anything, but I wish you guys a wonderful time wherever you are. And it's always brilliant to meet together to share knowledge, which is one of the key missions and visions of SPE. We thank everybody that made time to join us, especially our presenter, Gabriel. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
All right. So at this note, can you please all put on our videos to take a quick picture, photo, please. Can we all unmute ourselves so we can take this photo briefly? Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Can you all unmute? Some of you are still not mute. Sorry, still not showing your face. Christabel, Dimitru, Tim. I know some of you, so I'll mention your name. Mo, I know that's Mohammed. Please show your face. James, thank you so much. Adama, Celestina, Sophia, Dorothy, please show your face. No matter how the number we have here, we're still going to take that photo. All right, beautiful. Please show your face just for a few seconds. I'll ask you when to stop. A few more. Dimitru, Kathy, and Lynn. All right, Paul, I see you. Happy to see you. Thanks for those questions. All right, I think we'll do whatever we have now. So, all right, it is what it is.
You're gonna have to show your face, Professor. You have to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my face is showing good. All right, Dorothy, I see you. Beautiful. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. We go. We are SPE. Thank you.
Yeah, SPE.
All right. Thank you. It's done.
Thank you.
Right. Once again, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.